Hey everyone, Vancouver Radio, episode number 148. Now, I promised I would get the man mountain that is 26 stone Dave Crossland back on the show. We got some really good feedback on the first two steroids podcasts that we did, purely because, I don't know, people felt that it was an area that wasn't discussed enough. The industry isn't open enough about it. The people that use it, it's an overly complex area. If you read up about it online, you could pickle your brain very quickly. Either way, Dave, you're back on the show. Dave, hello, thank you.
Hello, glad to be here.
Dave, the feedback has been amazing so far. Did people reach out to you?
Yeah, I got a few extra questions and that. So it all seemed very positive, to be honest.
Good. I think some of the feedback I got is, people were interested to hear the positive slant, because I think the expectation is that if people are going to talk about it, there's going to be a whole load of negativity, and I think that's what refreshingly people, well, not wanted to hear, but almost needed to hear as well, because it's like anything. We could argue alcohol's a drug, but there's a place for it if it's managed properly, used properly, etc.
I would have said alcohol is probably more toxic than steroids. I mean, alcohol is recognised by the body as a poison. Ethanol is a poison. Steroids aren't direct poisons. They have issues, but they are not just a poison, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I mean, the surprising thing with me was I got quite a few natural athletes complimenting the show. And I was expecting an element of negativity, but a lot of them was just saying it was nice for it to just be so open and honest and straightforward and not overly complex for the sake of it.
Well, we're going to do more of that today, and considering you've already touched on alcohol, I'm going to skip to a question that I was going to ask later on. When people were talking about the show afterwards, an interesting comment came up in that steroids are a drug that alter the body. As a steroid user, do you feel like a normal drug user, and should steroids come with the same social connotations as other drugs that people would take recreationally?
I view myself as a drug abuser, yes. Let's get one thing straight. I'm not using these chemicals in the way they were designed to be used. So therefore I am abusing them.
Mm-hmm.
I have no issue with that label. I have no sort of... But most users would define that abuse is overly excessive use and normal use in the sense of normal bodybuilding use is just that, normal use. That's not abuse. But these were medications designed for specific roles. So if you're not using them within that classification, then yes, you are abusing them. Do I regard it in the same essence as other drug use? Yes and no. Firstly, it's not illegal. So there's a whole criminality side of the drug use.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that element to it. I think that there's a bigger parameter within steroid use for health concerns and such like. I mean, the problem with a lot of recreational drugs is, I mean, for example, cocaine now, street content is going to be somewhere between... It's just gone up recently because of legal highs, to be fair, but you're probably looking in the region of 12 to 20% of actual cocaine on what you buy on the street. So what's the rest of the shit? Benzocaine, lidocaine, even ketamine in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get that with steroids. You will get fake steroids that have got nothing at all in them. You'll get underdose steroids, or you may get test prop instead of test env. But you're not going to get a potentially other harmful ingredient as a general rule, because there's no need.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big difference in that side of things, definitely. From the social aspects, I think, to be honest, steroids are probably one of the least sociably acceptable drugs. I think about the only drug that would have more social stigma against it would be heroin. Cocaine is now a relatively socially accepted drug. It's the drug that successful people take. It's a mark of your success if you can afford to take cocaine. I think that's watered down a little over recent years, but definitely 10, 15 years ago, the only people that took cocaine were those that were doing very well. And it was a sign of an expression of your success that you could afford to do so. And it became very socially acceptable. I actually do this in a lot of my presentations. I said, if you went into the office on a Monday morning and said you did coke at the weekend, you'd probably get a few tuts and disapprovals. But a lot of people just turn around and say, oh, do you have a good weekend then? If you went in and said you decided to take in steroids, they'd be moving the desk starters off and rape them. It's just got that, because people are so poorly educated about the effects of the drug and what it does. They have this very stereotypical image that makes it socially very unacceptable to use.
Do you think that most of the perceptions that we have surely are a lot of the time constructed by the media, and any glorification of steroid use has been through people that have misused them? The reports that we've had are through like aggression, GBH, that kind of stuff. So straight away it's because that's what we see in the media, that's what we know as the side effect of steroid abuse.
Yes, I agree. And also, I think you get the situation like you do with people that get drunk. It wasn't me, it was the drink. No, it wasn't, it was you. It's been medically proven that at any point when you are consuming alcohol, you are still in control. And from a scientific point of view, alcohol can take no responsibility for your actions. You may be playing out your deepest innermost thoughts, or your stuff that you would never really normally dare to express. But they are still your thoughts and actions. They are not determined by the alcohol. And that's very similar with steroids. I've always said steroids doesn't change people, it reveals them. Yeah, there are certain drugs that will heighten your aggression, especially high androgens, fast-acting androgens, in a way of stuff like Emtren, Milborone, which is also known as check drops, Halo. They can make people slightly more aggressive, but they're not. What they are doing is they are tapping into the aggression that's already there and making it almost free. Got no aggression at all. They're not going to make you aggressive. So they don't particularly change personalities.
Okay.
They just, magnify them, I think is probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Okay, when we finished part 2 of the show last time, you messaged me on Facebook almost instantly and went, we didn't get to talk about PCT, post-cycle therapy, which I can imagine is actually probably just as important as talking about the drugs itself, because it sounds like the safe side of the drug use.
Yeah, the problem with PCT is it's not an exact science. Now, the leading authority in PCT is a guy called Dr. Michael Scally, American guy. He's a friend of mine, actually. We talk quite a bit, and even him, he's now starting to say that everyone goes by the Scally Power PCT, but he's starting to say, though it is a decent protocol, it needs a lot of refining, and the science of PCT is very much in its infancy. But the basic idea behind PCT is that we restore our normal testicular function as fast as possible. This way, it minimizes the period of time when we have low testosterone and high estrogen, and therefore we regain as much of our gains as we possibly can. Now, people argue, well, why should you come off? There is conflicting reports and studies on whether long-term testosterone use is going to do long-term damage. There are reports that says it does. There are reports that says it doesn't, and really there isn't a hard fact on either. A lot of people cite hormone replacement therapy. Well, they wouldn't give them that if it was going to cause problems long-term. Well, the point is we just don't know. And in 30 years of somebody's life, there are too many variables to control to be 100% defined that cardiac issue has come from the fact that they're using test and not from the fact that they eat fry-ups every morning and live off McDonald's. Too many varying factors in a person's life to control to define that exactly over long-term use what the problems are. And we just haven't got a big enough study group to say, well, look, there's too much of this going on for this just to be a coincidence. So anyone that quotes that TRT is safe and therefore long-term test use is safe is wrong. It's not that it isn't, it's that we don't know. The other thing is, though, you supercharge your body to growth. And it's not just the stress that drugs place on your system, it's the stress that growing places on your system. You know, forcing your body to grow at an extraordinary rate is going to put pressure on every system in there. So every now and again, you just need a break. It's as simple as that. And if you're going to have a break, you need to clear your system out and let everything sort of calm back down again. I'm a great fan of PCT. I'm a great fan of time off. I think it is essential for long-term health. But a large number of people, particularly when they start getting into the 40s on, feel that at that point there's not much point trying to restore your testicular function because your natural test is going to start to be in decline anyway. So you might as well just run at a very low dose test. And that's a personal choice, but the bottom line is we don't know really if there's damage to be done by doing that or not.
Okay, so for people that probably or maybe are not doing enough with their PCT or not consider it enough, I suppose what would be your kind of pearls, depending on what people are doing to make sure they do with their PCT?
I think for most people, particularly under the age of 50, a PCT is essential. You need time off. You just need time to let your body settle. And you shouldn't be paranoid about loss of gains, because if you do it correctly, you're not going to get any, or you're going to get very minimal. And it's really just describing it as you can't drive round in your car with your foot flat to the floor everywhere you go, because eventually something's going to break. So you just need to be able to back off and chill. And it's all, well, the pros don't. Well, actually, a lot of the pros do. When you see these pictures of the pros looking like they've lost 20, 30 pounds, it's because they've come off everything and they're not doing anything. They're just chilling out, giving their bodies a break, and then they'll go back on and build back up into the show season again. Now, if you're below your genetic potential, then really there is no reason for any losses to occur at all, because your body everything is within your body's capability to maintain that muscle mass. When you're beyond your genetic potential, this is when the problems start to occur, because it's just the physical digestion and absorption of enough nutrient before anything else in order to maintain that mass. And obviously the steroids improve that process. So if they're not in there, you're going to be starting to flounder because your own system physically can't deliver enough nutrient to support your mass. So then you've got argument that maybe a low dose cruise is a good idea for maintenance. But below that point, you don't need it. So if you don't need it, why put unnecessary chemicals into your system? 90% of people that cruise out of insecurity, because they just haven't got the confidence that they're going to maintain their gains, and they're scared of losing. And when they do come off, they lose water weight, they lose glycogen weight, and they're paranoid it's muscle mass. So they panic and jump back on again.
That's why I think you need a good coach guiding you throughout these processes. Just like in the contest prep scenario, even with a natural athlete, sometimes you need the guidance of a coach to say, no, it's fine, it's this process, this is what's happening, we're doing the right thing, carry on. Yeah.
Well, the other thing as well is there's a psychological dependency. People get hooked into this, I can't grow if I'm not on. And that again, you know, it is a form of dependency, and it is a form of addiction. But obviously, steroid users don't regard themselves as drug users, and this is where there's a big stumbling block sometimes. Well, you are. Yes, you are a drug user. You know, you inject, which is in drug form of drug use.
There's an interesting quote. I've no idea who it's from. That the day you start lifting is the day that you are forever small. In the fact that people, you know, constantly drive themselves to gain more muscle mass, and you know, in a small way, I am part of this movement in that I do train to better my body on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. But you make an interesting point about you take steroids, you reach your genetic potential. It's very hard for someone to sit there and go, right, I now accept that the body that I have is pretty much at my limit, and all I should really do is fine tune it, probably from an athletic potential, because even if you come off the drugs, and even if you're maybe on the drugs without pushing it further, you have to accept where your body can genetically get to and what it can hold on to.
But the whole industry is geared around us not accepting.
Mm-hmm.
The whole advertising campaigns, everything is geared about not accepting where you are, because you can always achieve more, which isn't the truth, but it sells products.
Yep.
And, you know, you have to accept. I mean, one of the biggest problems a lot of people have is just accepting the fact that they are not going to be a professional. They do not have the genetics to get there. So straight away, if you can accept where you think your genetic potential is, and I mean, you get the opposite side as well, that people very much underestimate the genetic potential as well. But I mean, you've got to just try and be realistic about what you can achieve. If you take a crap load of drugs and you know your diet and training's been on point and you're not carrying massive size, then it ain't never going to happen. So then you've got to make the decision, well, is my health worth what I'm going to gain by continually pushing this? Or do I step back, accept where I am, and learn to love myself as I am? And it sounds a bit hippie and a bit drippy, but it is very much about being honest with yourself. You know, you've got to be realistic about who you are, what you are, and where you are.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with striving for new goals, but there has to be a point when you say, I'm not achieving, and I'm giving this everything I'm willing to give it. So if I'm not achieving, then I'm a fool to pursue this because it's a fruitless endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much more I could be doing that's positive and going to gain me a lot more reward.
And maybe reward in other areas of your life.
Yeah, and not necessarily in bodybuilding. I mean, in other aspects of our lives, you know. If your sole happiness comes from the way you look, then I would say you've got a lot of holes in your life and really need to look at the quality of what you're doing. Because to have happiness in one single thing, whatever it may be, is a bit sad, really. You know, if you want a fulfilled life, you need happiness in lots of different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm dedicated about what I do, and I'm quite obsessive about what I do, but it isn't my life. You know, it's still, and I mean, even I set myself a cut-off point, a date where beyond that point I wasn't going to push anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if I hadn't made it by that time, it wasn't going to happen. And that was partly a health parameter, but from a point of view of physical health, but also from a point of view of mental health. And I think it's an area that's often overlooked.
Yeah, mental health is something we talked a lot about on the show recently, and I like your views are absolutely spot on. And you know, part of the drug use as a whole is a mental battle. How people view their psychology and stuff. You know, people need to go and talk to other people about that to wire it out. You go and see a psychotherapist, a counsellor, whatever. Just talk to someone and unravel this kind of stuff because it's your mental health.
Sometimes you just need to talk to a mate. You just need a sounding board. I mean, I think the problem is you need honesty. And unfortunately in our industry, there isn't a lot of that.
No.
You know, both from a point of view of people being honest about the way you look, both positive and negative. You being honest about what you feel you can achieve. How many guys do we see year in, year out, killing themselves to get on stage and just making the same place? Or sometimes even going backwards. Now, that's fine if they enjoy the process. But then all you see and hear from them on social media is, sick of eating in this bulk, can't wait to diet, sick of dieting, can't wait to eat, crap placement, I know I can do better, and the cycle just repeats and repeats and repeats. And it's like, really? You know, all that seems to be happening in your life is misery. So why the fuck are you doing this? Well, you know, if it hurts, not in a good way, and the reward is negative, why do it? You know, I mean, people say to me about my body fat levels and everything else. I say, well, yeah, but that's because I do this because I enjoy it. And I don't enjoy dieting. So I ain't going to bloody do it. There's no goal for me to diet. I don't compete. I've no desire to compete. And the reward of competing for me does not quantify the suffering of getting into condition. I have greatest respect for people that do it. But if I'm not enjoying my life, then I don't see the point.
Spot on. I want to pick up on a different point you made about kind of keeping muscle mass that has been gained. Now, quite a few of the private questions I got after the last two shows were about taking one cycle and trying to maintain that muscle mass, which obviously sounds like a very attractive prospect for a lot of people. Now, if someone was to say, let's do a 12-week cycle, they gained half a stone, what do you think are the key things to maintain that muscle 100% naturally? Is it just a case of eating enough calories at a maintenance level and making sure you're training hard in the gym?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Okay. And it's running a PCT that will get your natural system up and running as quick and efficiently as possible. The other problem is that it takes time. I don't like to use terms and phrases and these catch-all phrases because I find them very irritating. But to coin a phrase, you need to reset your body. It takes your body time to accept any weight loss or any weight gain as being permanent.
Sorry, Dave, just say that again. You broke up the signal. Sorry.
I said it takes time for your body to accept any weight loss as being permanent.
Got you.
So when you're dieting, if you diet down to a certain level of condition and don't maintain that, you'll rebound. But if you maintain that for 2-3 months, your body will then accept that as its normal stasis. And then it will fight hard to not move from that point. And it's the same with weight gain. If you do a 12-week cycle, you really need to maintain your final gains for a good 2-3 months before your body will accept them as being part of you. And then it's going to be a lot harder for your body to give them up. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, in that they'll do a 12-week massive bulk and then come off it and then start going into a cut. You're going to lose your last month of gains because your body's not accepted them. So it's going to give them up very, very easily. An ideal scenario from a point of view of maintaining size would be to do your bulk from the cycle, then run a very, very slow taper over, say, 8 weeks, which would be minuscule diminishing amounts, not from a point of view of anything to do with your endocrine system or anything like that, but more from a point of view of just getting your body to accept that mass. Then do your PCT, and your China will hold a lot better. But the problem then is it means that your 12-week cycles now become a 20-week cycle. And people get hooked into this, if I'm on gear, I'm going to push for size. Well, sometimes you need to just hold back and look to maintain. And that's always been the big problem with cycles, is because you come off and you lose the chemical advantage, your body will start to abandon the last few gains it's made because it doesn't want to carry them. If you can hold that mass for a long enough period of time, then it's all accepted and your body won't want to get rid of it.
Coming back to the point on genetic potential, I had a conversation with a coach a while ago, and he said he was considering taking a cycle. I asked him why, and he said, he thought he'd reached his genetic potential. So I delved a bit deeper and asked him about training and nutrition, and I sort of sat there and thought, well, I've been training for about a year now, and I don't think I've adapted that much. This was about 6 months ago. And I got to a point where I said, no, I believe there's an awful lot of genetic potential the body has. I just think you've got to work a damn sight harder to get it. And I've just gone through my off-season of training. I've spent 10 weeks in the gym, really, really, really hard, intensive training, 5 2-hour sessions a week, eating an inordinate amount of food. And I've put on some really good quality muscle mass. And I've really put my body through the paces. And I think people are not, again, it's the easy shortcut, it's the easy route out. People are not being really critical about what they've done in the past. It's like going on a diet. Look at your diet history. Have you spent all these years going back and forth between different diets? Look at your history. Have you actually worked hard, really pushed your calories up, really trained like an absolute animal, really put in a lot of volume under the bar? And I think a lot of people can probably honestly turn around and say no.
I mean, the thing is, the guys that do it right, the guys that succeed in the sport.
Yeah.
And that's not the masses. And the rest are, well, I've got crap genetics, I've got this, I've got that. Well, have you? Because it's not until you sit down and analyse their diets and their training and you start and going, whoa, hang on a minute, your diet's shit. Your training's good 50% of the time. you've got nowhere near where you need to be. But then there's also that element of balancing it with your life and how much are you willing to sacrifice. And this is what you get with a lot of people. They'll moan they're not getting the results. They'll moan they're not getting this. They'll moan they're not getting that. They don't look how they want. But when you put it on paper, what they have to do to achieve their goal, I'm not doing that. Well, then you're not going to achieve it. Well, I am, because I can just take these chemicals. Well, yes, you can. And that's where the argument falls apart, because, like, well, yeah, you can, but you could do it without them. Yeah, but it means doing a shitload more work, and I don't want to do that. I still want to eat my pizza on a weekend. You know, I still want to do this. I still want to be able to do my Facebook updates while I train. But I'm smashing it in the gym and all this. And it's so basically you want to continue to lie to yourself. Yes, I'm happy in my bubble. Leave me alone. And that's where it's difficult, because how do you convince someone not to use something that's going to get them the results they want with half the effort?
Very difficult.
Especially when a lot of people's end goal isn't about looking like Big Ramy or Kai. It's about looking like one of the fitness models, which isn't an over. Yeah, there are some that have exceptional physiques, but it's not an overly chemically dependent physique. And for some with good genetic, it is perfectly achievable naturally. For a lot, they may need some assistance, but they're not. But you've got guys doing 2G plus cycles to get an FHM cover model physique because they're spending all weekend out on the piss and doing coke and eating crap. But then again, that's where the real health issues come in then, because they're throwing coke down their throat, throwing beer down their throat, throwing a fat diet down their throat, gear on top, and then everything goes wrong. And they never turn around and say, oh, it's the kebabs and pizzas and coke and beer I drank and took all weekend. No, they turn around and say, oh, it's the steroids that's done this to me. Well, hang on a minute. You've not just been taking gear, mate. You've been ramming fucking narcotics up your nose, alcohol in your gut, and eating shite. But it's always the steroids.
Always. Right. As far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, last time we spoke, we didn't mention anything about insulin.
No.
As a standalone drug, is it something that people can and could use to benefit, or is it something that you have to work with other drugs for it to be really effective?
Right. Insulin is by far probably the most powerful anabolic agent available to us from a chemical point of view. But it's also by far one of the most dangerous. You ain't going to die from an overdose of test. You ain't going to die from an overdose of growth. You can't overdose. You will die from an overdose of insulin. It can work as a standalone, yes. It is very dependent on very crucial timing for it to work correctly, and it is very dependent on a very exact diet.
Interesting.
And insulin doesn't differentiate between fats, carbs, and proteins. So you have to make sure that the nutrients that it has available to it to work with are what you want in your system. It is personally, I find it is particularly effective around the workout window more than anything else. But it is a very complex subject, and definitely not something that I'd advise anybody going near unless they have a large amount of experience. Insulin in its own right, I suppose, would be more on the recovery side, but it does aid in training as well. So if you take insulin pre-workout, you'll get massive blood volumization. So you get absolutely huge pumps. That increased blood volume in the muscle is going to stimulate some growth in its own right, let alone the hypertrophy you occur from training anyway. And if you time your intra-nutrition correctly with the correct substances, it's going to drive much needed and very anabolic nutrients straight into your muscle from point one. So it's going to massively improve your recovery. A lot of people use it in a way of being able to consume more food, but I don't think that's the ideal way of doing it. Personally, I think the ideal way of doing it is around your workout window with a lot of intra and pre-workout liquid nutrition in the sense of amino acids and those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a very complex subject with a lot of different views, protocols, and ideas, and all to some degree have their merit, more so because of how powerful the hormone is than anything else.
I was working with a strongman probably about 4 years ago, and he came to me and said, I've started taking insulin, even though we're working together. And he said, I've been given a diet by the guy that gave me the insulin, and this is what I need to follow. Can you help me manage it? And I was like, look, I'll give it a go, but I don't really know what I'm doing here, buddy. And the diet that we were previously on was very different, as you say, to the diet that he got given to manage that insulin. And after 2 weeks, he was sitting there torn between doing two completely different things. And I said, look, go and get an expert, like the guy that gave you this drug, but I still think you could be doing better than eating a Snickers after workout for your nutrition and stuff like that. There was awful lot of junk food on there because of the sugar content and stuff. And I said, I still think you could do it in a healthy way.
Yeah, most definitely. The last thing you want to be doing is consuming shit like that on insulin, because you're just going to get fat. I mean, my insulin protocol, my current calorie intake per day is 5,000 calories, which isn't massive for my size.
No, it's not.
But what I have is a large amount of fast-acting carbs coming from Vitago, branched-chain aminos, essential aminos, leucine, glutamine, creatine, arginine, citrulline, L-carnitine, all going into my system via intra-nutrition with insulin when I'm training. There's no crap in my diet. I don't have a cheat day anymore, nothing, because I'm now running insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very precise on timings, and I mean some of my drink and meal protocol timings literally have a 5-minute plus minus window because of the insulin use, and that's how complex it is. And for a lot of people, that's impossible to integrate into their working life.
No, amazing. Wow.
Now you can get results on just shoving a bit in here and there, without a doubt, you can. But you want the optimum out of this stuff, and that's how precise it has to be.
Okay.
It's definitely something that I would never, ever recommend anybody use. Not from a point of view of anything else other than the knowledge required to run it correctly and effectively is massive. Risk of just getting fat or even hurting yourself can be there as well. I mean, I've had a hypo behind the wheel of a car at 80 miles an hour. Not a pleasant experience when you flip your car 4 times because you've gone unconscious because of insulin.
Yeah, not cool.
No, not at all. I learned the hard way.
Wow. Okay. Fran Heaton inspired this question. Another thing we didn't mention, and I think people know about it because this is glorified definitely online, in online media with steroid use, and that's synthol. There's been a lot of horror stories, mad guys, mad biceps, and for me, it feels like a drug for the serious end of body dysmorphia. People that are just going after something that's potentially and completely unachievable. What is it? Is it beneficial? What's the crack?
An SEO, a site enhancing oil, is what synthol is, and there's other types, painless pumps. They all come under the banner of synthol. Basically, it's a sterilized oil that causes the muscle to swell. It is actually quite a painful injection protocol because you are having an oil that's going to get in between muscle fibers and separate them. So that in its own right, it will stretch the fascia of the muscle. So that in its own right is quite painful. If used correctly, it can be the finishing edge to a very good physique. There's very little people on this planet that don't have a weak body part in some way or some nature. Mm-hmm. Synthol used correctly can be an excellent tool to just peak the body where you want those little subtle changes. And probably the most successful exponent of it is Flex Wheeler. And Kevin Lavone used quite a bit as well. But then you get your Greg Valentinos and those sort that just abuse the hell out of it and end up with this dysmorphed balloon. believing anybody a favour. It is very, very popular in Southern America, partly because a lot of them make it themselves, and they use cooking oil or versions of, and they can't afford the gear and everything else that goes with it, and the food and everything else, but they want the physique, so they use synthol. Definitely, you know, the extreme cases, these guys have a very twisted view of what they're seeing. But then again, don't most bodybuilders. I mean, I'm the size I am and I feel small. So, in a way, I've got just a twisted view as I have at this, thinking I'm small, as they have with all that in their bodies, thinking they look good. I mean, I suppose you could argue if it makes them happy, well, leave them be.
Mm.
But it's been demonised, and I think wrongly so. I've never used it myself because I don't feel I've ever had the need to. I have considered it, particularly with my chest, because I'm a tall pec, my chest is incredibly weak. But I decided it wasn't going to work, and I don't think it does work very well in major muscle groups. It mainly works in stuff like bis, tris, delts, calves, those sort of things. I've never needed it in my arms, thank God, so I've never had to. But I don't feel it's the demon it's made out to be. I just feel it's been so heavily abused. And it's very much bodybuilding's dirty little secret. People that use will just don't speak about it. I mean, I know some top amateurs in the UK with some incredible physiques that have used it and used it quite successfully, but they won't openly admit it for fear of ridicule. So it's now gained this dirty image that it's bad and it's this and it's that and it's the other. And it's just another tool in the arsenal. You know, if you're serious. And what I find quite strange is Esiclin is a site enhancer, but it's a steroid, right? That is perfectly acceptable to use. But an oil that is less harmful from a point of view of chemicals in your body isn't. But they do the same function. It's one of them things that abuse of has really caused it problems. And the guys that have used it correctly and successfully have never admitted to using it, so you don't know they've used it. And they don't know you've used it either because they don't look like them freaks. If used correctly, you won't tell. Or you'll find it very difficult to tell. So, like I say, it's a difficult one. I do think that it enjoys a reputation that isn't really deserved.
Okay, fair enough. Luke Bernardi asked, if someone had naturally low testosterone, say when they were young, maybe around 20, can low dose testosterone production sort of kickstart their natural production and help them on their way?
No. You introduce exogenous testosterone into your system, your natural production will shut down. It's as simple as that.
In all cases?
All cases.
Okay. Because
your body will sense that you've got enough testosterone in your system, so it stops making it. Simple as that. SARMs, selective androgen receptor modulators like ostarine and androgen S4, were originally developed because they hoped what they would do is provide an anabolic boost without causing any testicular shutdown. But what they've discovered, I believe, is that at doses that are effective, they at least cause suppression, if not shutdown. So they haven't quite been as successful as they hoped they would be. I have seen some more switched-on doctors use HCG protocols for people with low testosterone, where they'll use the HCG to help boost the natural testosterone production, so therefore they don't suffer shutdown instead of putting them on TRT and therefore making them drug dependent for the rest of the days. But unfortunately, the medical in this country is very much a case of in and out the door as fast as you can. And it's a lot easier and a lot more effective, and the drug companies are a lot happier if you just sign someone onto TRT, because it means they're dependent on testosterone for the rest of their life, and that company's getting a shitload of money for the rest of its days.
Okay. Russ Cornish asked, what's more effective in your eyes, a high dose testosterone only cycle or a lower dosed stacked cycle?
It's chalk and cheese, really, in a sense. There's too many variable factors down to genetics of an individual's response to the drugs, etc., etc., etc. Everybody's slightly different. The thing with a stack cycle is you can probably minimize sides from the drugs and still maintain the same sort of gains. Why, with a high test cycle, you're going to be fighting against estrogen issues and water retention and God knows what else. So, as I said, they both have their merit. And I don't think one, to a point, is particularly better than another. When you start getting into extremes, I mean, I'd never look at someone running 5G of test alone and nothing else. But at the lower end of the scale, I don't think you'll find much difference in the sense of 2G test against, a geotest and a geomasteron or something like that. Apart from the fact that, see, every drug has its little benefits. So masteron is going to help your estrogen control from the testosterone. So you're probably going to have to run less in the way of estrogen suppressants if you run a stack course like that. So actually, I would have said the stack course is going to be more efficient all round. It'll make the sides easier to manage. You can complement drugs that will work better with each other, and therefore the sum will be greater than its parts.
Okay. Robert Huskinson asked, are Anavar only courses for very slow and steady gains with the least possible side effects? And does this mean you don't have to run PCT?
Anavar has very low virilization, so yeah, side effects are minimal, which is why it's very popular with women.
Right.
It's low water yield, so you don't get the bloat because it doesn't aromatize. So your gains are generally going to be lean and hard, dry gains. And as a result, you're not going to get massive weight gain. PCT would definitely be minimal and possibly none at all, but it would depend on the individual.
So it almost sounds like that would be a very popular drug.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's definitely the starter drug for most female cycles. And a lot of people will start on an oral only cycle. If I was running an oral only cycle, I'd run some form of over the counter PCT tablet. The sort of things that you get for use after a pro hormone cycle.
Right.
So there'd still be a form of PCT, but you wouldn't be looking at running HCG and tamoxifen and Clomid and the rest of it. You'd just be running literally an over the counter pill.
You mentioned women a lot. It's obviously still relevant in men.
Yes, yeah, no, it's just men will generally start at 50 mg a day. It's a 9-hour half-life. Women would tend to start at 10 to 20 mg a day. Some even less, even, to be honest. But it is very, very popular with women, as Anavar.
Okay.
It's even to the point where I've seen middle-aged housewives using it thinking it's a fat burner.
I think I mentioned on one of the previous shows we did about when I was at a festival and I noticed that there was a lot of very young guys that looked very voluminous muscles, very dry, very hard-looking physiques, despite all the stuff that was going down their throat. Is this kind of a drug that would almost get that kind of physique? Because you mentioned quite a hard, dry muscle.
Yeah, I mean, the two drugs that would spring to mind if you were looking for that sort of physique would be Tren or Anavar.
Okay.
Both well known for hardness, dryness. Tren is very, very powerful as a drug, but it's also quite toxic. It's not a drug I personally like. I've used it. I don't really have issues with it. I've used it at quite high doses. But I don't feel that the benefits of it outweigh the potential health risk with it. I would be concerned at any drug that alters my dreams, because if it's altering my dreams, it's altering my brain chemistry.
Interesting. What about what about ZMA then?
I can't take that shit.
Because
Keeps me awake.
Oh right, people have said for years that ZMA gives
Yeah.
me crazy dreams, but do you think that's just because it's a greater depth of sleep?
I think with ZMA, you're talking about completely different axis of function.
Pathways, yeah.
Yeah, these are vitamins and minerals that elicit an effect. They're not chemicals that force changes.
Sure.
But yeah, I can't take that stuff at all.
Wow.
I can do all literally half the night if I take ZMA. And I like it as a product. I think it's a really good product.
Yeah.
It's one of those little subtle old school products that people have fallen out of favour and don't actually realise how good it bloody is.
Mm.
It's definitely, I think, should be a base of a lot of supplementation for naturals.
Yeah, because I sell a product that's Transdermal, which we talk about how it aids recovery and reducing muscle soreness after training, but people forget it's basically topical ZMA. So we always have questions. People say, so do I use ZMA on off days and your spray on training days? And I'm like, no, just use the spray every day because topical absorbs better than oral in terms of ZMA.
Well, yeah, I mean, the big key with ZMA was it always has to be taken on an empty stomach.
Mm.
Well, I always go to bed on a full stomach.
Yeah, me too.
So it's always been a pain in the ass from that point of view. So it was a case of, well, I wait till I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning for a pee and then take it then.
But then if you take it transdermally, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Being on an empty stomach.
Yeah, I suppose sublingual would work very well with it as well.
Yeah. So on the skin or via the buccal pathway is very beneficial.
Be a real twat and create a suppository version.
Okay, I'm coming to the end. I'm cruising in on the final 10-15 minutes. I wanted to kind of rehash a question from last time because I think it's probably the thing that's niggling in people's brains. So when I kind of asked people about what they wanted me to cover on this show, which a lot of it we have done, we discussed positives and negatives last time.
Mm-hmm.
But the big kind of scary thing for people is, is there a way to take steroids healthily and naturally? And in your opinion, again, do the positives outweigh the negatives when done properly? But on the caveat of this, people, for me, need to understand also the cost implications of this as well on a, let's say, a monthly or a cycle basis.
Right. Is it possible to take steroids safely? No. Because it's not even possible to take an aspirin safely. Every drug has side effects. Every drug has potential health risks. Is it possible to manage the health risks? Yes. I think that's the thing that people need to be very, very clear about. Steroids are not safe. And anyone that tells you they are is a dick. However, the side effects and the health risks can be managed. And it's all down to how much work you put into that as to how much you're going to minimize the risk to your health. The other aspect with that is, I've lost my train of thought, sorry.
Positives outweighing the negatives, right, so, the safety.
Yes, no, I was thinking of the risk-reward ratio. That's a personal thing at the end of the day. I've met guys that are obviously ill, are obviously suffering from their drug use, but they are happy to put up with that because they enjoy the rewards they're getting from doing it more so. So it is definitely a personal thing. And I mean, I've pushed my luck a few times. I've made mistakes. I've stayed on too long and various other things. And I've actually had bouts afterwards where I've gone through a barrage of health checks to make sure I'm okay. And I've been quite concerned. Have I gone too far? Have I, screwed it up? And up to press, I haven't. I've always come out the other side fine. I do think, to a large extent, some of the health risks are, even within the community itself. I mean, orals. Orals have a massive reputation for knacking your liver. Well, I don't actually think they stress your liver while you're using them, yes. But if you're a healthy, clean living individual and able to override, I'd be shocked to see any long-term liver damage done by the use of orals, even over a sustained period of time. I mean, the only medical study really done on pharmaceutical doses was 100 milligram of oxymethylone a day for 20 weeks. And the only recorded effect it had on the individual's health was the alteration of the lipid levels. There was no permanent liver damage or anything. And 100 mg of oxy is a starter dose for someone who's anemic. Now, they can't be banging out this drug at 200 and 250 and 300 mg a day doses for someone suffering from anemia if it's going to be that toxic to the rest of the system. It's just not going to work. So, some of the risks are overrated. However, at the same time, what is very much underrated is the stress on the body from pushing your body to grow in the first place. Training in its own right creates a lot of stress for the liver and kidneys to deal with. A lot of waste products for the liver and kidney to deal with. Kidneys get a massive flush of creatine once you finish training that they have to process. And you need those internal organs to be in their optimal state because you're going to be consuming huge amounts of food and you're going to be putting massive stresses on your body to grow. Take the drugs out of the picture completely. When you're trying to put 2-3 pounds of muscle on a week over a 12-week course or whatever it may be, if you're really hammering it hard, that in the body. So there's a bigger factor to the health risks involved with steroid use than just the drugs themselves. It's the actual pressure it puts on your system for growing at that speed and rate. There are certain drugs that are nasty, and there are certain drugs that, in my opinion, are not worth the potential risk. But that's down to an individual's decision, really. All I can say is that you need to weigh up for yourself what the likelihood benefits you're going to get out of that drug against the potential negatives. I mean, I don't regret any of my drug use. And it's given me a lot more than just my size. I mean, indirectly, my size and the drugs have given me my career. And various other aspects as well. It helped with my self-confidence. I mean, I spent the first 4 days of this week stood up in front of thousands of people talking. I'd have never done that before I took steroids. Because as I've gained in size, I've gained in confidence in myself. Now my confidence isn't denoted by my size and isn't dependent on my size, but it was initially. But as I've done more things, I've got more confidence in my own ability, and I don't rely on the fact that I'm a big lump anymore like I used to. So the risk reward is an incredibly personal thing, and I don't think anyone can lay judgment on that. It's just a case of that you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. And I don't think a lot of people are. If you're not making progression, and if you're not achieving your goals when you're taking these drugs, then I would seriously question why you're taking these drugs. Why would you put a potentially poisonous chemical into your system if you're not getting anything out the back of it? And I think a lot of people get into this rut of using without really questioning why they're using. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? I've gone my specific drug route on my last big cycle, which I've just started last Saturday, because I've had to alter the way I train and everything I do because of the trapped nerves in my back. So my drug protocol is based around maximising my growth out of what I can do training-wise. So where in the past I've gone heavy and hard, I'm now having to look at more blood volumization. So the obvious answer is to go down the insulin route. So what was the last bit of the question?
Just the cost implementation.
Yeah, you don't. When you people look at the cost of steroids, they look at the cost of the actual drugs themselves. That's a fraction of what it's going to cost you. You've got the increased food. You've got the ancillary drugs for side effects and such like estrogen management. You've got increased supplements for health. You want to start taking products that are going to look after your lipids. You want to start taking products that are going to look after your heart health. You want to start taking products that are going to minimize the chance of build up of plaque in the system. And it can get very expensive. And then you've also got to look at the impact on your diet. If you don't already have a very good diet, you're going to have to start getting one. It's not a case of that if you have a shit diet when you have gear that you're going to suffer irreparably from it. No, but why take the risk and why put more demands on your system than it already has? If you make your body's life whilst using gear as stress-free as possible, then your body can make all its energy into growing. If you're stressing your body out because your diet's not quite right or because of another factor or this factor or that factor, then your body's diverting energies towards dealing with those situations, and that's losing you potential growth. So the healthier you can be, the more you're going to grow. It's as simple as that.
If you were to put a number on it, you obviously have an idea of what your lifestyle might cost in terms of steroid use. What kind of number we can put in it? Let's put something in people's heads.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll use my own examples for me, okay?
Okay.
So I'm 360 pounds. I spend about £110 a week on meat. I spend in excess of £300 a month on supplements, which are health supplements and various aminos and other bits and bats. My gear bill is probably 300 to 350 a month. My insulin bill is probably only around £50-60 a month, maybe £100 tops. My growth hormone bill, when running at full bore, which I'm not yet, is going to be somewhere in the region of £2,000 a month.
Holy fuck. £2,000. Do you go and do you rob a granny at that point in the month? Jesus.
Work damn hard.
I know, but wow. What's it made out of? I mean, like.
my growth at full bore is 24 IU a day. Now, if I'm buying a good quality Chinese generic, I'm going to be paying around £1.50 an IU if I'm buying in volume. So Ansenum, which is actually a Chinese farmer, is roughly you can give you buy enough of it, you can get it about £1.50 an IU, maybe slightly less. And then I would run a European farmer, and I'd split it between the two. Now, a good price for 36 IU genotropin Pfizer pen is £130. Now, bearing in mind that I'm doing 24 IU a day, so one pen lasts me a day and a half.
So if we were to look at someone of, we'll call it more normal body weight, they could probably look to kind of half or maybe 2/3 of that.
Less the growth, they could probably look at the growth at a quarter of that. And if they went generic, they could probably get the growth bill down to, between 300 and 500 a month for a lot lower end user. But yeah, I mean, growth is a game changer, but growth is also a big money drug.
Sure.
I mean, for bang for your buck, even for power, insulin's the most powerful of them all, and it's probably the cheapest of them all. But it's also the most dangerous of them all. And really, to run insulin without growth is going to be tricky. Growth just helps with controlling fat levels and other things as well. But yeah, I mean, it can get very expensive.
Wow.
Very expensive.
Okay, let's look to wrap up. If anyone is sitting here thinking, I want to read more stuff on paper, blogs, is there a particular website that you think is the best credible source of information for steroid reading?
No, but there will be shortly.
Okay, cool. Are you working on something, guy?
Yes.
Brilliant. Good man.
www.crosslands.org.uk. That's my harm reduction company. And we're developing a membership-based section on the website. We've got Milo Scarva is going to be writing articles for us on growth and insulin use. We've got Michael Scally doing articles on PCT and that side of things. There's going to be a drug database that will list the 250-odd registered trade name steroids, pharmaceutical-based, and then there'll be a section on peptides, and there'll be a section on ancillaries, and there'll be a section on fat burners, and then we're hoping to build a database. But that's obviously very, very difficult because these labs come and go, and the products change, and everything else. And then there will be a sort of monthly newsletter, and there's a free level which gives you access to the database and the base articles, and then there'll be a paid level which will give you access to more in-depth articles and a certain amount of advice. And we're probably going to have sort of live Q&A nights where you can come on and ask questions of various people, and we'll try and get a guest in that specialises in a particular subject when we do a certain night. So if it was growth and insulin, we'd put like Milo Scarvis in there, and he'd answer questions on that because he's probably one of the best when it comes to growth and insulin. I'll try and get Mark Robinson from Cardiff Nutrition to do a supplement one and various other bits. Mark's a bit hard to tie down, to be honest. There's this. The thing what I'd say is, if you research a drug, read about it from 3 or 4 different sources. You'll pick out the common traits, so you can pretty much know that they're correct. And then if you've got conflict information, you just need to do a bit more research on those specific conflicts information. Mm-hmm. If it's any good, it'll be backed up with references to medical research.
Okay.
Book-wise, a very good starter book is William Llewellyn's Anabolics.
Okay.
Because it's not written from a usage point of view, like Dan Duchesne's is and a lot of the other ones are. It's written from just a factual point of view. So it tells you how the drugs basically work in your system. It's not infallible, but it'll give you a good base.
Sure.
If you want to get to the more extreme end of things, then start looking at Paul Borison's stuff. Paul was a bit of a mad scientist. He's a love him or hate him character. The problem with Paul was he was a very intelligent man with a lot of cutting-edge ideas, but there was also a huge amount of bullshit with him as well. And it tarred what otherwise could have been a very successful career. He did eventually kill himself. Not him. He died of drugs. He developed quite a bad drug habit. But he's the man behind T5s. He's the guy that came up with T5s.
Okay.
And he named them T5s as a piss take. Because you had thyroxine T4 and T3. So he's like, well, what's the next one up the list? T5. He was talking about insulin and growth protocols 20 years ago. When nobody else had a clue. So you've got to cut through the bull a little bit, but it's definitely an interesting read, is his stuff. And if you want to see the extreme end of drug use, that's the man to read about.
Okay. Give me your website URL again. Crossland.
www.crosslands, CROSLANDS. So it's only one S in the name, and it's a plural.
Yep.
.org.uk. We're hoping to be up and running to some degree by September. The website's there already.
So people people leave their email address on that
you
front
can register.
page and stuff? Cool, okay, wicked.
And then when we send the newsletters out, it'll go through that. The website's up and running and functioning every way. It's just not got the content when it comes to the individual side.
Cool. All right, brilliant.
We're working on the moment.
Well, go and check that out, everyone. That was crosslands.org.uk. Also, after we filmed episode 1 and 2, I went and bought your under construction video. I would recommend that You laughed. Did I say it wrong? It's called Under Construction, isn't it?
Called Under Construction, the film.
Yeah. I recommend that if anyone wants to get a bit more of an insight into Dave's brain, why he does things, the kind of, I suppose, the real side of steroid use, the actual taking it, the training, the food side of it, go and support what Dave does. Go and buy the video. It's not a lot of money at all. It's very well filmed. It's very fascinating. It's very kind of documentary style. The URL for that, Dave, is
www.underconstructionthefilm.com.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it? Genuinely,
I did.
Criticisms?
Criticisms. The only thing, I was just fascinated by your diet. In that and this is me being a nutritionist, you spoke a lot about your diet, the volume, the kind of, it seemed like you ate a lot of lean meat, rice, veggies, that kind of stuff. What we look at as a typical bodybuilding diet, and you struggled to get it down. I was almost perplexed as to why you wouldn't choose higher calorie foods.
I don't respond well with fats.
Okay.
Even good fats. They just shut me down. I find I get very bloated. I get very sluggish with them.
Interesting. Oh, cool. Interesting.
I've always struggled with fats, and I've always run quite low fat diets. The other thing as well is I have a natural tendency to put fat on very, very easily. So I suppose I've got almost a built-in fear of fats, even good fats. And even though I know that's nutritionally quite wrong, I have this mental block with it almost. I'm running a little bit more in fats in my diet now. On my rest days, my carbs are quite reduced, and I'm running a lot higher fats on my rest days. But it is comfort.
Okay, I think
on my rest days I have no appetite at all because I've got fats in my diet, and I just feel sluggish.
It's really interesting. It's how I build my whole nutrition philosophy. Like, people ask, should he have a high fat diet, a high carb diet? And I say, do what makes you feel good. Like me, for an individual, I like a high-ish fat diet. You like a high carb diet, and that's what makes you feel good. And really, that's how you should build your diet, because feeling good is the holy grail.
You never feel good when you're trying to push 10,000 calories a day down your throat. You feel like shit constantly.
I bet.
I mean, that's something people don't realise. When you get into where I am now with pushing the limits and stuff, you don't particularly feel good. It is a chore. I mean, you inject every day. I currently inject 3 injections in the morning, and then 8 injections throughout the day.
Bloody hell. Wow.
And it's like, it does, you're sore all the time, you're uncomfortable all the time, you're uncomfortable from the shots. When you're running growth through the day, you're knackered because of the growth hormone in your system during the day. And it's not this, I feel $1 million and I feel like Superman because I'm full of tests. Is it bollocks? It's damn hard work. Just existing. But
Dave, thank you very much for being on the show. We have to wrap it up because I'm actually going to go to the gym, otherwise I'm going to lose all my gains.
I'm just about to go train back and shoulders.
Nice one. Thank you again. You've done 3 episodes. It's been invaluable. People that have listened to this, please share it with a friend. Tell people about this. It's been invaluable. It's 3 hours of really high quality information on this. Visit those websites. They'll be in the show description as well. They'll be posted on Facebook and Twitter as well. And Dave, when your website goes live, please send it to me and I'll send it out to my email list and make everyone aware that if they want to join that resource, then they can. I'd like to repay that. And go and watch his film.
Just one thing with the website, it is from a harm reduction point of view and an information point of view. It's not, you won't find steroid cycles on there. You won't find a course to get big or a course to get lean on there. It isn't about that.
Yeah.
It's about keeping people safe.
Brilliant. Well done. All right, Dave, thank you. I am wrapping up the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I will be back on next week with another guest. Me and Rachel are taking a little break because we've done some back-to-back shows. So another guest next week. Who that is at the moment, I've no idea. We'll see what happens. Stay awesome. Dave, thanks again, and I will speak to you all on the next show. Ciao. Hey everyone, Ben Cooper Radio, episode number 147. Me and Foxy Rachel Guy in the house. We are going bad, fast, quick to the bone today. We've both gone, oh my God, we haven't got much time. I've got to rush off to Manchester. Rachel's got to go and train a client. We've gone, right, let's do this show.